Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Earwax. I'm Colin, and this is hip hop. All right, almost 20-year-old Donald Glover internet references aside, I'm going to be straight up here. I am not the, best person when it comes to hip hop and rap. I know what I like. I know what genres interest me, or at least subgenres interest me. I know what albums interest me. And today, specifically, we're going to be talking about my top five favorite albums of all time when it comes to rap and hip hop. Now, again, I've got a very specific style that I like. I've got a very specific sort of like flow that I look for in my rappers. I'm definitely more into the lyricism and like more simple beats than like overproduced stuff. I'm also very nerdy, so I do like some nerdier stuff. Not necessarily nerdcore, but just like stuff that leans in a slightly nerdier direction. So yeah, let's dive right in and get ready to piss some people off. All right, so coming in at number five is going to be Enter the Wu-Tang by Wu-Tang Clan. Now, this is probably one of the most iconic hip hop albums of all time. It's definitely like a gold standard when it comes to gangster rap. I got into this album in college. Actually, bandmate of mine for a metal band that I was in at the time is the one that showed it to me. And it was the first time I'd really enjoyed a like 90s sort of like gangster hip hop album. I love some of the obscure kind of Japanese references on it. I love just the chaos of it. I mean, you've got I think nine members all doing different songs, kind of rapping over each other. You've got the skits, and like generally, I'm not a big skit person, but this song has got, or this album has got some absolute bangers on it. Method Man, Cream. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. It's such a classic album. There's not really much I can say about it that hasn't already been said. But yeah, it's definitely a gold standard as far as like 90s gangster rap goes. And interesting enough, like I don't think that they ever really hit the high of this album ever again in their career. They definitely had some good stuff after this. Obviously, they all had really storied solo careers. I know specifically Ghostface, Raekwon, Jizza, RZA, and Method Man all went on to have like pretty prolific solo careers. ODB died unfortunately before he could really get into his solo career, but there's nothing that I think any of them either have done collectively or individually that has quite captured the magic that this album did. All right, coming in at number four is going to be The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest. Now, this is arguably, in my opinion, one of the most important hip hop albums of all time. It really set the stage and kind of the standard for jazz rap, alternative rap, and just kind of showing that you can really have an amazing hip hop rap album without having to be super aggressive. This album, front to back, is an overall a pretty positive album. Scenario, Check the Rhyme, Busta Rhymes kind of got his start off of this album, but the back and forth between Q-Tip and Phife Dawg on this album is absolutely incredible. I think this album is pretty much unmatched when it comes to 90s like hip hop albums, at least in my opinion. Again, which is very very loaded coming from the opinion of a white kid that grew up in the 90s and early 2000s in the suburbs and like lower middle class. So obviously you take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I don't think that you can really call yourself like a true fan of 90s hip hop and not at least have listened to this album front to back a few times. And I think one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, and will always be included on a list like this, in my opinion. All right, now we're getting into some more of the nerdier shit. I will admit that this is not necessarily an objective list. It is going to be very much my personal taste and preference. So this next pick is not necessarily something I would consider like what other people may consider like one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, but it was one of the first albums that really got me into hip hop, and it'll always have a special place in my heart, and that is Deltron 3030. So Deltron 3030, if for some reason you're not familiar, is a supergroup side project. This came out in 2000 between Del the Funky Homo Sapien, Dan the Automator, which was a big producer at the time, and the DJ Kid Koala. So Del the Funky Homo Sapien, if you don't know him, he's from Oakland, got his start in a group called Hieroglyphics, another one of my favorite groups of all time, being, living in the Bay Area for a while. I got to see them live a handful of times. It was always a fucking great show, but it was this album in particular that really got me into them. I first heard Del on the Gorillaz debut album, which came out a year after this. It was actually also produced by Dan the Automator. But I got into this, I want to say, like my sophomore year of high school, so 2008. About 8 years after it came out. And man, was I bummed that I did not discover it sooner, because this is an absolute masterpiece of an album if you like sci-fi. This is a crazy sort of concept album set in the year 3030, where Del and the Automator, or Deltron Zero and the Automator, like alter egos of Del the Funky Homo Sapien and Dan the Automator, are like rebelling against this oppressive government, and it's just a wild ride through and through. My favorite tracks are going to be Madness and Virus, but honestly, there's just bangers front to back. Some really fun skits too. Again, I'm not generally a huge skit person, but I like when they're really playful and fun like this. And yeah, again, this may not be everyone's cup of tea, but if you like kind of weird, quirky, out there lyrics, really unique orchestral beats, and just a fun, experience, definitely one to check out. All right, Madvillain, Madvillainy. This is, I think, objectively one of the best hip hop and rap albums ever written. It's a collaboration between MF Doom and the producer Madlib. Now, I know that this is not for everyone. There's a kind of running joke throughout like music critics that MF Doom is your favorite rapper's favorite rapper, never really broke into the mainstream. Closest he probably ever got was on a Gorillaz album as well. You see, and there's a theme here to the stuff that I like. But objectively, this is a fucking amazing album. Like front to back, the production on this thing is insane. The bars that MF Doom drops are just unmatched. I think this is easily the peak of his career. As much as I love everything he's ever put out, I don't think you have a lot of modern underground hip hop without this album. Like, it is just so influential. I cannot speak highly enough about it. I mean, all caps, America's Most Blunted. That was like our go-to weed smoking song back when I was like in high school and college. I don't think I can say anything about this album that necessarily hasn't been said before. It is easily one of the most critically acclaimed in sort of the underground hip hop scene. But yeah, it is a fucking masterpiece. And if you do not know this album, go check it out right now and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, and my number one rap hip hop album of all time is going to be None Shall Pass by A$AP Rock. Now, I will admit, again, this is a very personal choice. A$AP is not everyone's cup of tea. Before, people jump down my throat, this is not A$AP Rocky. I don't know how many times I have to explain this. A$AP Rock been rapping since like the mid to late 90s. This was the first album that really kind of marked a turn for him as far as his production got a little bit crazier, got a little bit more experimental. His flow got a lot more playful. I like to kind of separate his career like before this album and then after it. This is, again, my favorite hip hop rap album of all time. I actually have this album cover tattooed on me. And yeah, it's such a fun album. It's whimsical. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a fucking song about pirates, for God's sake. But like, it's also very serious sometimes. None Shall Pass is, I think, one of the just best like groovy underground hip hop songs ever written. Even if you're not familiar with this album, you probably have heard like Coffee, or at least the hooks from Coffee, a couple times. And yeah, again, I can't say enough good things about this album. If you don't know it, you got to check it out. Aesop Rock, he's known for, I think they did like an official list a few years ago of the rappers with the biggest vocabulary, at least like they use the most unique words in their lyrics and stuff like that. And this is, or he is, without a doubt, like by a wide margin, the winner in that competition. His lyricism is unmatched. His flow is crazy. Again, it's not your like stereotypical like mainstream hip hop. It's not going to be anything that really gets a lot of radio play. And he's continued to put out just banger after banger after banger after this album. Before it as well. I mean, some of his really early stuff is a little raw, a little rough, but it's still really good. And then I highly recommend also, if you haven't checked it out, Labor Days, the album that came out right before this, is a good kind of like transition period as well, where you see a lot of his older style, his more raw, kind of like underground stuff, but he was starting to lean into a little bit more of the lyricism and the imagery and the playfulness that you really see come through on this album. But yeah, again, it's so goddamn good. I can't speak highly enough about it. And if you don't know it, go check it out. Even if you're, don't think a white boy can rap outside of maybe Eminem, definitely this album will prove you wrong. All right, guys, so that's it. Those are my top 5 rap and hip-hop albums of all time. Let me know down in the comments what your top 5 are, if you think I'm a fucking idiot, if those are not even close. Let me know if you've checked them out, if you like them. If you haven't checked them out, go check them out and then come back and let me know if you like them. And yeah, as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.